In my opinion, episode 5 of Ahsoka has been the best one so far for a few reasons, all of which center around the lesson Anakin was trying to teach Ahsoka. The series has continued to deliver on fun lightsaber duels, but this one in particular I think served a really important purpose. And it's really brought together some of the things we've been seeing throughout the series. Anakin's lesson basically boils down to you don't need to be like me and you can move beyond what I tried to make you. A big part of the success in this episode, I think, is how well they were able to handle treating Anakin as a wise mentor without undermining or disregarding the character flaws he had, which brought him down the road to becoming Vader. He doesn't have the kind of sit down and talk about it style that Obi-Wan often does with Luke, and I think a big part of him being a wise mentor means showing that he understands that he isn't or wasn't that. The lesson he's trying to show Ahsoka heavily relies on these flaws, and the lesson wouldn't have landed the same way if not for them being leaned into. We're being shown a redeemed Anakin who knows that he went wrong and has gained awareness most importantly on why he went wrong. It's not about him coming to Ahsoka and begging for forgiveness for his own sake, it's about going to her and allowing her to see that she isn't him. For those of you who have read the Expanded Universe books, there is one situation where Anakin basically comes to Luke and whines that Leia hasn't forgiven him because now he's redeemed, and I think it really ignores the important part of redemption. Redemption shouldn't just be a thing where you flip a switch and everyone's forced to forgive you. You have to understand what it is you've done wrong, and it's up to other people how they feel about that. And that's why I think this is such an effective use of Anakin. He knows how Ahsoka feels about him, he knows that's partially responsible for where she finds herself, and rather than holding that against her, as younger Anakin probably would have, he's using it as a way to try to help her. He basically wants to reverse some of the generational trauma he himself inflicted on Ahsoka, which he refers to with saying she's part of a legacy, and he talks about how all of the apprentices are basically what their masters made them, which he doesn't really believe. That's what he's correctly surmising she's afraid of. So Anakin's taking it upon himself to highlight she's not in fact him, and what she does is her choice, not his, not Obi-Wan's, not Qui-Gon's, Dooku's, or Yoda's. Throughout the series so far, we've kind of been seeing an Ahsoka who's living up to the fake lessons Anakin claims to be trying to teach her in the visions. She's heavily moving towards a viewpoint where the ends justify the means with her un-Jedi-like way of extracting information from Morgan, and she's been working to turn Sabine into a weapon, the same way Anakin did to her during the Clone Wars. The conflict is absorbing her the same way it did him. Baylan made it clear that this was his assessment of both Anakin and Ahsoka last episode as well. In Rebels, Ahsoka told Ezra she owes him her life, but as Sabine basically says, none of this has remained about actually helping Ezra for her. It's not that she's so far gone that she wouldn't want to, given the opportunity, but her willingness to sacrifice him has moved somewhere beyond just a sad acceptance that it may come to that, into being yet another dispassionate decision that that's war and this is her life. I think this is underlined somewhat by the focus being almost entirely on them saving Sabine and Ezra after she wakes up in her new Gandalf Reborn outfit, rather than continuing to focus on stopping Morgan and Thrawn. That's obviously still the goal, but the framing is just as important. Anakin is finally in a position where he's able to see that he's in no small part responsible for this viewpoint, and so is the legacy he was talking about. For him, this is kind of his own version of the moment where Obi-Wan tells him he's failed him. He's basically taking the environment he trained her in, acknowledging the effects it had on him, and pushing the live or die dichotomy in a way that makes the live choice mean always fighting. Throughout their scenes together, especially with the younger Ahsoka, who I think did a great job, we see Anakin showing more and more how that dichotomy contributed to driving him down this dark path, and Ahsoka starts pushing more against it. I think this idea is something we're all probably a little familiar with either on the kid/student side or the parent/mentor side. If Anakin had just come out and said, hey, don't be like me, that doesn't resonate the same way as making the conclusion come from Ahsoka herself, by becoming an oppositional force representing the path she's been going down, which she's now forced to confront. This is why there were so many moments where we see the transformation into Darth Vader. We're not supposed to take Anakin's advice at face value until she basically rejects what he's saying, prompting him to drop the Vader act and say there's hope for her still. And again, a lot of this seems reflected in Ahsoka's disposition after waking up. Despite the failure to stop Thrawn, we see a much more optimistic Ahsoka, with a clearer grasp on her goals, and even a somewhat more Jedi-like mindset where she's trusting in the Force, aka perfectly happy to ask some whales for help, like Ezra did at the end of Rebels. I'm glad this was covered this episode, the way that they're going to be getting to Peridea, rather than taking up another whole episode on its own, because I think keeping this together highlights the connection between her spirit journey with Anakin and being able to get this help from the Purrgil. I think it probably would have made an incredibly boring episode watching them try to figure out the Purgle thing, when I think it was pretty clear, at least to anyone who watched Rebels, that they were probably the answer the whole time, having been around for this entire series. So even though it took up a good chunk of screen time here, making them come to that conclusion, I think it was closely enough tied to the other things going on earlier in the episode that it didn't feel like it was dragging too much. We're probably up for some tougher moments in the remaining 3 episodes, so having a sequence that was really just triumphant for Ahsoka feels like the right move. It's a little sad that Hera and Jason aren't going with her in Huyang, but I think the fleet shots in this series have been building up to their involvement in a bigger battle, so hopefully that's the case, and maybe we still have a chance to see Zeb on the way back too. I'm excited to see where things are going though. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you next time.